Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPLScope and the weekly wildcard draft for Game Week 9. This is the series that I do every single week where I try to wildcard draft and select what I think is the best squad to have in Fantasy Premier League going forward in the next few game weeks. And also, this is going to be presented in a different way than most other content creators do it. I'm going to present it in the style of an NBA or NFL style draft, where the number one pick is going to be the player that I think is the most important player to have in Fantasy Premier League currently. And then the 15th pick in my squad is going to be the guy that I think is, barely making it into the squad, basically. I'm also going to present to you a couple of names that I did think about adding to the squad and some variations of the squad that I have thought about, because there are some potential things you can do with the Game Week 9 wildcard drafts that I wasn't prepared to do in Game Week 8, but we'll get to that eventually in the video. But let's get started with the number one pick this time around, and it's a new guy. It's the number 3 pick from last time, and that is going to be Cole Palmer. I think he has pretty damn good fixtures. I think Newcastle at home is a pretty good fixture. Man United away is kind of tough to predict because Man United have been sort of defensively minded and pretty good defensively so the last few game weeks. But I think when facing a good team like Chelsea, it could be a struggle time for them like we saw against Liverpool early in the season. I think Palmer against Newcastle at home as well, that's a pretty good fixture for him. He scored one goal and had 1 assist against them last season, and he might even be like a differential captaincy shout. I'm going to get more into that later on, but I think Palmer is going to be just really good value for this season in general. I think he's my favorite, like 10 million type of midfielder for, like, if you just disregard fixtures and all that stuff. I think he's going to be the best, and I think the fixtures now are pretty good as well. Looking at the next 4 fixtures, Newcastle is a pretty good fixture. Man United is a decent fixture. Arsenal is not the best fixture, but then Leicester away is a really, really good fixture as well. You could wait until Game Week 12 to bring him in, but I think this is a pretty good time to bring him in, even if you're not on a wildcard, which I'm currently thinking about doing as well. I might get in Palmer myself, even though I'm not wildcarding this week since I wildcarded already in Game Week 6. But yeah, Palmer is amazing. We know how good he is. He's been one of the best Fantasy Premier League players, well, basically the best Fantasy Premier League player the last season and 3 quarters, I guess, or 1 quarter, as we are through the season, or 1/4 of the season that we are through now. So yeah, Palmer's just been amazing. He's on penalties, plays for a team that is a lot better than last season as well in Chelsea. So I think Palmer is going to be really, really good value despite having a really high price hike before the start of the season, basically. But yeah, he's amazing, and he's the number 1 pick for that reason. Number 2, we have Mbeumo, who again didn't have the best game this last time around against Man United, didn't really do much at all, but the 2 game weeks before that he scored and looked really good. So yeah, I think Mbeumo is fantastic, especially for this game against Ipswich at home. But if he fails to make a mark against Ipswich, I think it could be the signs of things to come for him, because I think the fixtures are going to be a bit more difficult going forward. I think Bournemouth at home is a decent fixture, but both Fulham away and Everton away look kind of difficult, judging on how both those teams have looked defensively lately. But yeah, Mbeumo's still a really good pick. I think for the Ipswich game and the Bournemouth game especially, he's really good. The Fulham games and Everton games aren't the worst either. They're pretty good. But yeah. Anyways, he is the Brentford talisman. He takes penalties. It's just a fantastic player all around. Underrated player, probably underpriced by quite a bit as well. So yeah, I think Mbeumo was a fantastic pick at number 2. Number 3, we have Morgan Rogers, who again is sort of like Palmer, someone that you could have for longer parts of the season, I think. But Rogers especially, who's really, really good value at 5.0. He's not quite the level of Palmer from last year, but he's not that far away from it either. He plays for Aston Villa, plays pretty much every single game, 60 plus minutes every single game. He's a fantastic player. I think he's been Aston Villa's best player so far this season, and they have a lot of good players. So yeah, he's also been providing the FPL points lately and scoring and assisting every single game, it seems like. He's in an attacking midfield role, and it's just super pivotal to what Aston Villa do. So even though the fixtures aren't the best, they're also not the worst either. Bournemouth at home and Crystal Palace at home within the next 4 are 2 pretty good fixtures for attackers. Spurs away as well. We've seen several teams score against Spurs, and Rodgers can do that as well. And then Liverpool away is obviously a really tough fixture, but you could always bench him in that game as well. But yeah, Rodgers is just a fantastic player. Has the same celebration as Palmer. They both come from the City Academy, so yeah, it makes sense to have them both in the team, I guess, from that perspective as well. 2 really good friends and 2 really, really good players that I really enjoy watching as well. So yeah, those are 2 really good picks, and I think Rodgers is just someone that I am more and more comfortable with potentially keeping for the whole season, seeing as I've had him from Game Week 1 already, and I haven't sold him yet, and I don't really have any plans to in the near future either. So yeah, Rodgers is a fantastic pick, and he comes in at number 3 for that reason. Number 4, we have Matheus Cunha, who is the striker that I'm the most excited about currently. He has really, really good fixtures up until basically Christmas, basically like Game Week 18 or so. He has fantastic fixtures. He's gone through a hell of a fixture run so far this season and hasn't really hasn't really set Fantasy Premier League on fire, but he's also been pretty good in general. He's had like a decent score so far this season. And I think he's going to be more and more vital as the fixtures for Wolves get better and better. I think he's shown already in games where Wolves have actually managed to create something and actually been on the front foot. He's been the main focal point of that attack. So while I really do like Jørgen Strand Larsen, who is Norwegian like myself, I think he's a really good option as well for 5.5. I think Cunha is just a little bit more exciting, and I just think Wolves are good enough for me to have a lot of faith in Cunha. I think if I was expecting this player to be just like a rotational player that can use every other game week, then Strand Larsen would be better. But seeing as Cunha is someone that I want to play every single game week, seeing as they have really good matches, I'm very comfortable paying that extra fee to get in Cunha over Strand Larsen, and I think he's going to be more vital to Wolverhampton as the games get easier. But I think both are really good picks, but Cunha is just the one that excites me even more. And he's still pretty cheap, even though he's the more expensive out of the two. So yeah, Cunha comes in at number 4. Number 5, we have a newcomer actually, and that is going to be Alejandro Garnacho. You can see his name is in green, but I think just the fixtures alone are really, really good. And this last game for Man United really made me a believer both in Garnacho and also slightly more in Man United. That's always been the worry for me, or the issue with Man United, both, especially with Garnacho. The playing time so far hasn't been the best, but I think he is set to play going forward, seeing how vital he was to the win against Brentford. West Ham away is also really, really good fixture for him. That's where he scored 2 goals, I think, last season, got 16 points on my bench. I remember I had him back then and benched him and was really unhappy with that. So yeah, I think Garnacho's next fixture is really, really good. And then the Leicester at home, Ipswich away fixtures as well in Game Week 11 and in Game Week 12 are just fantastic fixtures. Even Chelsea at home is also a decent fixture. So yeah, Garnacho I think is just a really exciting player. I think he's the Man United player to own. Yes, he doesn't take penalties like Bruno Fernandes, but he's way more involved in attacking play and more close to the goal and just a better goal threat and all that stuff. And he's also cheaper as well. So yeah, he makes a lot of sense, I think, as the Manchester United pick, seeing as they have really, really, really good fixtures. So I think this is the time to jump on Garnacho. I wish I could do it myself with my own team, but I'm probably not going to do it myself. But maybe I'll find a way to bring him in because I think he has some really decent matches going forward now. And I am really interested in bringing him in for that reason, pretty much. Number 6, we have Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is still my favorite defender in the game. Liverpool are pretty good defensively. You saw them now against Chelsea as well. Even against a really good offensive attacking team, they managed to do pretty well defensively. Yes, they did concede again, and they have conceded a couple goals in some matches where the clean sheets have been taken away for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He only has 1 assist yet as well so far this season. But yeah, again, I'm just still impressed by Liverpool and Trent in general. I think he's still a really good pick. And the fixtures now are actually getting a bit better as well, as you can see. Brighton at home and Southampton away within the next 4 games. Arsenal away is probably not ideal, but at the same time, this is a typical game that could end 0-0 as well. We've seen that with big teams, big 6 teams in the past. They can all of a sudden end up 0-0 for some reason. And he has that extra attacking threat as well. So yeah, I think Trent is someone that you can play every single game week. And I still think he's a fantastic player to have. And I don't really think the funds are necessary for the rest of the squad either. That's like the main sticking point people have with Trent. Just the fact that if you sell him, you get more money for the rest of your squad. But I still think he's like 7.1 right about now, 7.2 I think, or something like that. And I think that's a pretty cheap price for a pretty good player who should be getting really high scores every single game week. Or most game weeks at least. So yeah, Trent is still my favorite defender. He comes in at number 6. Number 7, we have Raul Jimenez as my second favorite forward, and that tells you something about the forwards currently, because I don't really have too many forwards that I'm completely locked in on. I think there are a lot of close, like really good candidates, but I don't think there's any like slam dunk knockout candidates that I can support. But Jimenez in his own right is a fantastic player to have. You can see all the fixtures as well, all marked in light blue, which means that they are pretty easy matches. Everton away is kind of a tough fixture, but he has a pretty decent track record against Everton, especially before the head injury. But he looks back to his best as well, and he's just been really impressive so far this season, getting chances, scoring chances. Fulham are looking really good. They have really good fixtures, and yeah, he's just in basically good old form, and we know how good he was back in the day in FPL, and he's now about the same price that he was when he first broke onto the scene and was a fantastic, outstanding pick. And he looks like that this season so far. So yeah, I think for the price, he's just really, really good. It also allows me to have more money left for the rest of the team, like I just said with Trent. Downgrading to Jimenez in attack is something that works out when it comes to saving money, so that works out as well for Jimenez. I think he's just a an outstanding player in general. I really like him as like an FPL legacy pick on top of that. And just the good fixtures and Fulham's pretty good form so far this season just tells me that he is going to be a decent player to have. He's also someone you can bench from time to time. Could potentially bench him this week because it is a bit of a benching headache with this squad that I have selected. But yeah, he's someone that is really good, and yeah, I just love to see it, that he's back to good old form basically. So yeah, he comes in at number 7. Number 8, we have the final midfielder, which is going to be Brennan Johnson, and that means there's no space for his teammate Heung-min Son. Heung-min Son is like basically all the hype this past game week, especially since he got that assist credited to him that was taken away again. There's been so much talk about Son. He looked pretty dangerous and scored a goal and had almost an assist. But he still only ended up with 1 goal in that game. But yeah, we know how good Son is, but I think just for the price, Johnson is better. Yes, Son is most likely going to get more points than Johnson. He is a more clinical player. He's on penalties and all that stuff as well. He has some advantages, but I think Johnson has looked absolutely terrific lately, and he had 2 major big chances against West Ham early on in the game as well, where he easily could have scored. So yeah, I think Johnson is in the right positions all the time. He's in really, really good form, and I think for the price, he's just more valuable than Son at the minute. But I can get why you would go with Son, but for me, I just couldn't find enough money in the bank to get Son with the team that I have currently, which I'm going to get to eventually why I can't be able to afford Son. And you can probably tell from the team right now who's the final pick in attack, but yeah, we'll get to that pretty soon. But first, we're going to talk about potentially a teammate of his, Enrico Lewis, who I still think is a decent player in defense. I think in terms of nailedness, I think Lewis is going to play pretty much every single game. I'm not that worried about his playing time. I've noted this before in other videos that I think Pep likes to have certain players in his squad. Last season, I was pretty early on the Julian Alvarez bandwagon. Even in Game Week 3, I brought him in because I knew from the season prior to that whenever Kevin De Bruyne was out, Julian Alvarez played every single game pretty much. And the same could be said for Rico Lewis and Rodri. Whenever Rodri is out, it seems like Rico Lewis plays all the time. That was the case last season. That was the case at the start of the season when Rodri was injured. And that has been the case since Rodri has been injured again now. So yeah, I don't really worry about Lewis's playing time that much at all. It's just the clean sheets that never seem to come with Man City. But then again, he is only a 4.7 defender. We have such high hopes for him as like a City defender. He's going to set the world alight and get like 10, 15 points. And we're so disappointed when he doesn't do that. But we have to take into account his price. He's only 4.7. He's slightly more expensive than some other players that I will mention eventually. But he has so much higher potential playing for Man City, both in terms of clean sheets and in terms of attacking threat. So while the points are still eluding us, and yes, Guardiola is looking better currently, I still think Lewis is just a fantastic pick for the price that he is. So even though I'm losing slightly more and more faith as long as City keep conceding and their fixtures get worse and worse as well. But I still think Lewis is just pretty much a cheat code this season eventually. I think he's going to come good. I just wouldn't let go of him. I think he's going to turn good at some point this season, and I don't want to be left without him when that point comes in the season, basically. So yeah, I could very well come against Southampton now. I remember not owning Cancelo against Southampton one time, and he got like 19 points. Maybe that will happen to Lewis. I don't know. But we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, I think Lewis is still a great pick. We should just manage to temper our expectations for him because, yeah, he is not one of these 6.0 defenders and we shouldn't treat him as such. But he could have that value eventually this season. So, yeah, I just think Lewis is still a really good pick, even though he's dropped down a bit in the ratings, but that's mostly due to Man City just continuing to concede goals and also having tougher and tougher fixtures. But eventually, they'll figure it out, most likely, under Pep Guardiola. They usually do. They still manage to get the wins. They still manage to get the points. But I think they will look a lot better offensively as well eventually, and potentially get those clean sheets eventually as well. So yeah, I don't really worry too much about Lewis. He's still a really good cheap pick, and yeah, I'm going to keep him for that reason. But yeah, I mentioned another Man City player and another player that's really expensive and another attacker, and that is going to be Erling Haaland. He is still in the squad, but he has dropped down quite considerably from last time around. He has blanked 3 game weeks in a row, and seeing as he is 15.4 in terms of value, in terms of cost, that is just unacceptable for someone, basically, especially when you captain him every single game week. I captained him the last 2 game weeks, and I did captain Saka the game week prior to that when Saka got 3 points, and that scared me off of going with someone else than Haaland as captain, and that has sort of punished me. But I don't know, it is tied down to a couple of different things. The fact that Haaland is struggling. Mostly, I think it's down to just the team. City are struggling a bit as a team. Rodri being out, De Bruyne being out, 2 of their best players being out. that is affecting Haaland quite considerably. The other thing is just game state. Just like if you concede early on, and if you're chasing a team that is pretty defensive in terms of score, it's going to be really tough to score. But if they manage to get the first goal against Southampton, for example, if they score within the first like 10 minutes of the game, that could be a hat-trick for Haaland again. That could be triple captain potential for him. So I don't really have faith in him as a triple captain. I'm not sure even that I would captain him. That's basically the sticking point. I think that's why I still have him in the squad, because he is that expensive. So he needs to basically be the captain for you to for it to be worth it for you to have him, or have money invested in him basically. But for now, I still think I don't really trust any other captaincy choice enough to ditch Haaland. But that's basically it. If either Salah or like if Liverpool or Arsenal had really good fixtures, or if Palmer had an even better fixture, if he played a really, really easy team to play against, I probably would have gone without Haaland and captained someone else. But I still think Haaland is going to be the best captaincy option this week, and that's why I feel like I can't really let go of him. But I could be persuaded to go without him, I guess, on a projected wildcard, which this is, if I was convinced by any of the other captaincy choices. Palmer, potentially, I'm looking into potentially captaining him, or thinking of him as a captaincy potential player there. But I think Haaland is still just a safer choice. Like I said, if City score early against Southampton, which is a really, really bad team, Southampton home is like the best fixture you can have this season pretty much, then I think it could be a fantastic fixture for Haaland, where a lot of people will get a lot of faith back into him. But again, it's also tied down to Kevin De Bruyne. How long is Kevin De Bruyne going to be out? That's going to affect Haaland. If Kevin De Bruyne was back, I'd have no hesitation having Haaland in the squad. But seeing as De Bruyne is still away from the team, he's still not ready to play, I'm not quite as convinced with Haaland. And there are some really good players that I'm going to mention towards the end of the video that are really tempting, that you can afford if you don't go with Haaland. So yeah. But yeah, for now, I think it's the best captaincy choice, and that's basically why he's still in the squad. But yeah, it's do or die basically for Haaland. If he doesn't provide the goods against Southampton, I probably will sell him, even in my own team, without a wildcard, pretty much. Number 11, we have Ryan Ait-Nouri. I did mention earlier that there are similar price players as Lewis that we have lower expectations to. Ait-Nouri hasn't really done much so far this season, but we know how attacking he is. He plays basically as a left winger for Wolverhampton. I still think he's a really good pick. And like I said, with Cunha, all those really good fixtures count the same for Ait-Nouri. He's going to be really, really good for the long term. And yeah, he's a favorite of mine. I brought him in pretty late last season, and he had several really good game weeks. Game weeks where he was even game weeks where he was really close to like mega scores, but then they conceded super late, which is always going to be the worry with Wolves. They do concede quite a lot of goals, but Ait-Nouri is also someone that can score, and he's also really cheap. He's still 4.4, I think. Maybe he's 4.5 now. So yeah, I think the fixtures, just how attacking he is, how talented he is, he's a really, really good player, really fun to watch as well. All those things go into it when I pick him for the squad. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I do have a pretty strong defense, so that's the only thing with him. Like I would potentially consider going with just like a 4.0 defender instead of Ait-Nouri, but I have pretty much 5 defensive players or 5 defenders in this team that could start. But yeah, that's because I have some money to spare as well with this team. But yeah, Ait-Nouri, favorite of mine. Really like to watch him play, and those good fixtures and just his position, his playing time, all that stuff is really, really good. So yeah, quite like Ait-Nouri as a pick at number 11. Number 12, I did mention we have a pretty good defense, and it is Mykolenko, who is the 4th defender in the team. Another player that is sort of tough to bench, but at the same time, I kind of like benching. I don't know. I kind of like having my defenders as my priority, like as my main backup options. But that came good for me last game week, where Mykolenko came off the bench and got me 7 points. I think Everton are looking better defensively day by day, especially once Brentford is back. That's going to help them immensely, and you can see it from the fixtures there as well. They have some pretty easy fixtures in general, or decent fixtures, I should say. Yeah. I could also drop him down to someone like Van den Berg, for example, for 4.0. That is something that I would consider. Extra funds is always nice. You never know when you need them. So that is why he's sort of down in the pecking order. Both him and Ait-Nouri, I couldn't really decide between those two guys. I'm a bit biased towards Mykolenko just because he just got me 7 points in my own team in a pretty atrocious game week overall. So maybe that swayed me, but yeah, not completely convinced by Mykolenko, but at the same time, I am pretty convinced by Everton. It seems like they've done the same thing this season as they did last season, where they started off really badly defensively, and then they just figured it out and managed to keep the clean sheets a couple times. And with the fixtures that they have now, I think Mykolenko is just worth it for 4.3 as well. He's really, really cheap. so it doesn't really make that much of a difference to go with him rather than someone like Van den Berg. It just gives you another option to play with in your team, basically. So yeah, he comes in at number 12. Number 13, we have a new goalkeeper. He's also marked in green like Mykolenko and Garnacho and Jimenez, new players in the squad from last time around. And the new goalkeeper is going to be Sels, fresh off of a clean sheet for Nottingham Forest against Crystal Palace. He was the goalkeeper that I was the closest to having in my own squad for my Gaming 6 wildcard myself, because Nottingham Forest have just been so good defensively this season, and it doesn't seem to stop at any point. So I think he is just slightly underpriced this season, considering how good the Nottingham Forest are defensively. They also have decent fixtures. Leicester away should be a decent fixture, and then 2 home games where they're really good at home. Obviously Arsenal away, but that's something you have to live with goalkeepers, I think. It doesn't really matter too much that it's a game where you can get saves. All of a sudden they keep a clean sheet. All of a sudden Arsenal get a red card for some stupid reason. And they managed to keep a clean sheet in that game. They did manage to keep a clean sheet at Anfield, so they've shown that they can do it against anyone. So yeah, I quite like Sels as just a player you can play every single game week, and they can get rare or surprising clean sheets, I should say, all of a sudden from a game at Anfield or potentially from a game at the Emirates, for example. So yeah, just quite like Sels in general as someone that I can play every single game week from Nottingham Forest that I can depend on. That's what sort of appealed to me when I was close to bringing him in for the Gaming 6 wildcard, but I went with Robert Sanchez instead, who plays for a worse defense in Chelsea, but also had like a better start of the season, I guess, which sort of swayed me in the wrong direction. But I think Sels is the best goalkeeper to have currently, because Nottingham Forest have just been so good defensively. So he comes in at number 13, that I'm not completely sold about any goalkeeper in the game, basically. So yeah, it's sort of up for grabs, but I think Sels is my favorite goalkeeper as of this moment right now. Number 14, we have still Gabriel Magalhaes. He's someone that I just don't want to let go of, but now playing against Liverpool without Saliba next to him, Newcastle away, Chelsea away, pretty tough fixtures after that. Newcastle away, maybe it's not that difficult. Maybe I should tone down the difficulty rating on that team, or in that fixture. But still, it's just tough fixtures. That's why he's sort of low down in the rankings there. But at the same time, I kind of like having an Arsenal defender as well, because they are still the best defense in the league. I think they've been unlucky, sort of like a mixture of unlucky and just, I don't know, kind of silly with the red cards and stuff. They have been getting some silly red cards. Some of them they shouldn't have gotten, in my opinion, especially the Declan Rice one, I think was completely out of order. I'm saying as I'm wearing a Declan Rice West Ham shirt, but anyways, Arsenal just can't seem to get out of their own way. And yeah, the start of the season they kept clean sheets when they didn't really deserve it, and lately they have not kept clean sheets when they have sort of deserved it. So when they have deserved to keep a clean sheet. So it's kind of hard to read Arsenal, but at the same time, we saw last season how good they are as a defense, and I think that's still the case. But it's going to be tough now against Liverpool, for example. So you can bench Gabriel, but at the same time, he also has that goal threat all the time. He's so good at set pieces. Arsenal's so good at set pieces. So there's still a lot of good value in Gabriel, and I also like to have him for the long haul, for the long term. I think he's going to be a really good asset this season as well. So yeah, I'm a bit conflicted just because of the fixtures, his price, and just the form of Arsenal and Saliba now being out and stuff. But at the same time, we know how good Gabriel is, and we know what he and Arsenal can do defensively and offensively, basically. So yeah, he makes it into the squad, but barely, because there's a player that I was really considering bringing in instead of him. But for now, I'm leaning towards Gabriel, but he's also someone that you can flip down to a cheaper player if you want to bring in a more expensive player in attack, which I'm also going to discuss towards the end of the video pretty much. Finally, the 15th pick is going to be the backup goalkeeper once again. It's going to be Fabianski, and Areola in front of him just keeps having pretty bad matches for West Ham. West Ham keep conceding goals. Fabianski is a decent goalkeeper in his own right, so I think he could potentially be in for a start eventually this season if Areola keeps playing as badly as he has done so far. There are no reports on it at this moment of time, but I think it should only be a matter of time before Fabianski steps in as the number one goalkeeper, because Areola just hasn't been that good this season. But anyways, he's just a backup goalkeeper. We trust Sels to play in every single match anyway. So he's just a backup. That's why it's the number 15th pick, basically. But I do think he is the goalkeeper with the best chance of being a starter out of the 4.0 goalkeepers. So that's why he's the backup goalkeeper for now. But yeah, that is 15 players. And you can see 4 players are marked with green, which means that they are new. Those are Sels, Mykolenko, Garnacho, and Jimenez, 1 in each position even, which I didn't really plan on doing, but that's just how it ended up being. So that means also 4 players have dropped out, and I'm going to talk about those 4 players that were in the Game Week 8 draft that have been dropped out. You can see that the number 5 pick from last time around, number 10 pick, and then number 13 and 14 are all removed since last time. So yeah, I'm going to reveal that before we go into the 3 players that I did consider that just didn't make the squad as well. So yeah, first and foremost, number 5 last week was Dominic Solanke, who I had a lot of faith in, especially 2 weeks ago. I thought he was going to be like one of the best picks, seeing as how Spurs have looked really good offensively, and also the good fixtures that they had going forward, and also just how good Solanke looked at the start of the season in terms of getting to big chances and stuff. I thought he looked like a really good pick, but in the last 2 game weeks, he's just looked really off the pace in terms of FPL points. He's played more deep lying role, doesn't really play as a proper striker. There's just enough doubts for me now to not really trust him. There's quite a few attacking options actually that I'm considering ahead of him. So yeah, he just has to drop out. I think the better Spurs assets are in midfield. You even have 4 of them basically in Son, Johnson, Madison, and Kulusevski, 4 really good assets in midfield that I think are better if you want to cover up with Spurs players. But yeah, Solanke, I shouldn't really write him off completely yet, but it's just 2 games in a row where he's looked sort of the same, where he's hasn't really looked threatening at all. It's just enough for me to not go with him, especially seeing as he is a bit more pricey than some of these other forwards that I have included in this squad, for example, in Cunha and Jimenez. So yeah, Solanke drops out for that reason. Smith Rowe as well, another player that sort of disappointed me last game week. I thought at home he would be pretty good, but he played against Aston Villa, so I guess that sort of made them struggle a bit. It seems like Fulham are setting up a bit differently when it comes to playing tougher teams and playing easier teams, especially with Smith Rowe. We saw that against Man City. Smith Rowe was just dropped completely, didn't even start for Fulham. So I think they sort of prefer the defensive stability of a different player in those types of matches. So yeah, you can still see the fixtures are pretty good for him. That's why I picked him last time around. He has good fixtures. Everton away, Brentford at home, Crystal Palace away, Wolves at home, especially those home games. I think he should be a pretty good player. I don't think he is like a must sell or anything like that at the moment in time, but there's just a lot of defenders that I really, really like. You can see the final defender that I picked is Johnson, who's number 8 pick. So that tells you something about how strongly I feel about the midfielders that I have this game week. So yeah, he just doesn't fulfill the requirements that I need for this team at the moment in time. But I still think he's a decent pick. I wouldn't really rush to sell him if I had him. Maybe if I had enough money in the bank and I was really into some player like Garnacho, for example, then maybe I'd pull the trigger if I had no other pressing issues, I guess. But yeah, Smith Rowe is still a decent player. But yeah, just slightly put off by that final game from him. In goal, Sanchez, like I mentioned, Sanchez and Sels were the 2 players that I was considering from game week 6 wildcard onwards. And Sanchez hasn't really provided the goods lately. Chelsea just keep conceding goals. They are still a pretty weak defensive team. So yeah, I've just dropped Sanchez for Sels. I think Sels is just a more secure defensive pick at this moment in time. Sanchez is also a bit more expensive, especially if you're looking to invest into a new goalkeeper. For Sanchez is going to be 4.7 and Sels is going to be 4.5. That's a little bit more money saved as well, but if you go with Sels, and I think he just has a better chance of keeping clean sheets in general because he plays for a better defensive team in Nottingham Forest. So yeah, Sanchez has dropped out for that reason. And Van den Berg, I've dropped him out. I'm not quite sure why. I think it was just because I couldn't really decide between Ait-Nouri and Mykolenko, so I just wanted to feature both of them. But yeah, if you prefer to just have like a guy you can put on the bench every single game week and not worry about the benching headache, then I would just put Van den Berg in for either Ait-Nouri or Mykolenko. Or if you want to get money for someone else, maybe do Gabriel down to Van den Berg and get a different team. I'm going to talk about that more on the cusp section, where I talk about players that I did consider but didn't have in the squad. There is a different variation of the squad where you can have some pretty good players where Gabriel would have to be removed, I think. So yeah, let's move on to that section actually. On the cusp, the 3 players that I did consider pretty strongly but didn't end up picking in the squad. And yes, one of them is Son. I'm going to get to him eventually, but first I'm going to talk about Guardiola, who's the player that I talked about as a potential replacement for Gabriel. Guardiola has scored 2 goals since I sold him in Game Week 6 wildcard. Before that, Gabriel scored every single game week. Then I sold Guardiola for Gabriel, and now Gabriel has been doing nothing offensively, and Guardiola has scored, which is typical FPL. But yeah, Guardiola has a lot of goal threat. He has a wand of a right foot even though he's left-footed. He has a really good shooting foot with his right as well. So he can score from pretty difficult situations, as we've seen with Man City. They take a lot of long shots and score a lot of long shots actually. And Guardiola is really, really good at them with both feet as well. So yeah, Gabriel has a lot of goal threat. He plays for City, so he should have good defensive capabilities or good clean sheet potential, but so far not so good when it comes to the clean sheets. But lately he's been a scoring machine. I don't think you can really count on that as like long shots and stuff. I don't really think that's usually what you can expect from Guardiola. But But yeah, he has that really good fixture against Southampton, especially, that I would consider to have him in. But I think long term, I just prefer Gabriel by slight by a hair, I guess. But yeah, I like both of those players. So yeah, you could go with either or. You could also just go that with Vandenberg and invest more in the rest of the team. For example, if you want Son over Johnson, then you could downgrade Gabriel and have enough money probably to do Johnson to Son. But that would leave you a bit suspect defensively with just Ait-Nouri or Mykolenko playing every single game week. But for now, that could potentially be the best case scenario, or the best way to do it now in FPL. So yeah, Son is not included in the squad, but that's basically just because I think Johnson is slightly better value. I think you could potentially go with both of them if you really like the Spurs attack, and why wouldn't you really? Because they've scored 3 goals or 4 goals in the last few games. So you could potentially double up with both Johnson and Son, but I just really like Garnacho. So yeah, I prefer Johnson just because of his price, and I think Garnacho, having that bit of diversity and having several teams in the squad is always a good thing, I think. And also Man United, I've been more sold on, and especially Garnacho lately. So yeah, Son drops out, but I could easily see why you would pick him. He's going to get a lot of points, probably more points than Garnacho and Johnson, but I'm not sure if it's worth the price of admission basically for him, because he's pretty expensive. It's going to be hard to have Haaland, Palmer, and then potentially Salah at some point as well, which is what I'm going to talk about eventually. But Watkins is another player that I'm really considering, and that's basically if I were to sell Haaland, I think Watkins would be my replacement by far. In the projected wildcard squad, I should say, because I have both Haaland and Watkins in my own squad. And I'm really happy with Watkins, actually. I was close to selling him for Solanke last week, and I'm really happy I didn't, because Watkins is just amazing. He keeps playing really well. He was rested now in the Champions League as well, so he should probably play more as expected in the league. He has Bournemouth at home next game week. Tottenham, he can score against Crystal Palace at home eventually as well, even though he has that Liverpool at Anfield game, which is tough. I think he's just a really, really good pick, and he's my favorite selection to replace Haaland. Obviously, if I were to replace Jimenez with Watkins, I wouldn't have enough money for that. So yeah, I don't have enough to do that. Maybe if I downgraded one of the midfielders to a cheaper midfielder, Johnson to like a Dibbling or something, I would be able to afford that. But yeah, Watkins is really, really tempting. I think he's just been really, really good this season. He's providing the goods. Aston Villa are looking really, really good, but yeah, the fixture congestion for Aston Villa will surely catch up with them at some point. Even if Watkins got his rest now in the Champions League, the rest of the team will have to play the matches as well, and eventually that will wear them out, probably. But yeah, really like Watkins. That's why I have him in my own team. But I just didn't select him in the team because I still have that faith in Haaland as the captaincy choice for this game week. But you could potentially go without Haaland. That is something that I'm not completely opposed to. If you're on a wildcard this week, for example, I think you could go without Haaland, even though he has that fixture against Southampton. I think next week I'm most likely, unless Haaland scores like a hat-trick and De Bruyne is back straight away, and it just looks pivotal for the next few game weeks, I'm probably going to remove him from next week's weekly wildcard draft in game week 10. But for now, I think Southampton at home is just too good to go against, I guess. But if you were to remove Haaland, I would replace him with Watkins, and that gives you enough money to upgrade both Garnacho and Johnson to Salah and Son, I think. And then you, assuming you downgrade Gabriel to Vandenberg, for example. So I think that is something that you could do. Instead, if you don't want to go with Haaland, if you want to spice things up a little bit, have Salah and Son on top of Palmer, which is a pretty fun squad as well to have. And have Trent and Mbeumo on top of that, and Watkins. That's actually a really, really strong squad. So that is something you can consider as well. That is something that I did consider for this draft as well. But I also sort of just wanted to include Garnacho because I think he is someone that has been overlooked a little bit. And I think he's someone that I would be really, really keen to bring in myself. And I might actually do it myself as well. But most likely, I'm looking to bring in Palmer and Cunha. As you can see, the number 1 and number 4 players in this weekly wildcard draft, and they are basically the 2 highest rated players that I don't own already because I have Mbeumo and Rodgers already in my squad. So that is probably going to be my priority with my own transfers when it comes to not wildcarding. But if I was wildcarding, this is the squad I would select basically, and I just told you why basically. So yeah, if you enjoyed that, please subscribe and you will get this every single week. I think it's a pretty helpful video even if you're not on wildcard, where I talk about the best players to have in FPL currently. That's always a good thing to know basically, whether you're on a wildcard or not. And I'm going to sprinkle in some single transfer or double transfer stuff in between the wildcard selections as well in these videos in the future. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, hope you liked the video, and you can comment down below if there's anything I missed, any variations to the squad you prefer, any players that I haven't talked about that you think I should mention, any players that I've included that you think are just completely out their picks that you don't agree with at all, please let me know in the comment section. I usually respond to every single comment. So yeah, would love to see that as well down in the comments. So with that out of the way, thank you for watching. As always, see you next time. Bye bye.